Well, once again, I'm talking to you, and at the moment, I'm looking at some incidents from the life of Jesus. I find it's very interesting if you actually, when you're in the Gospels, you really look at the kind of things Jesus was doing and the reasons why. I mean, if I look in Matthew chapter 9, Jesus had been giving quite a strong message. And then in verse 18, it says, while he was still speaking, a certain ruler from the synagogue came and said, my daughter is now dead, but come and lay your hand on her and she will live. And it's quite interesting to see the immediate reaction of Jesus was, yes, to go and help. And Jesus went and he was followed by his disciples. So his disciples were to see what had happened. But the interesting thing is, if you look at chapter 10, you'll find out that he, at this point in chapter 9, had not actually chosen the 12 disciples. So this is just simply a crowd of disciples in general. And it looks to me as if Jesus was accompanied by a lot of people, but shortly after this, as we shall see, Jesus was to choose 12 specifically. Anyway, in this particular story, you know that he was traveling on the road to the ruler's house, and obviously there's a big crowd of people, big enough that a woman who'd been diseased for 12 years, had a problem bleeding, came behind him to touch the hem of his garment. Because of the crowd, and it does quite clearly say in Scripture, there was an enormous crowd, and her idea was to come to Jesus without being recognized. But yet this is not how the story unfolds, because she was saying, in faith, if I touch him, I shall be healed. But Jesus knew that virtue had gone out, turned around and said, daughter, be of comfort. Your faith has made you whole. And I want you to see the strong significance here. She was healed because of her faith. And it's not referring to the power of Jesus so much as the faith of the woman. And then, of course, this created a delay. And by the time he got to the ruler's house, the daughter was clearly dead. But in verse 24, Jesus said she's not dead, but sleeping. And the mourners laughed at him, but he went in, took her by the hand, and the child rose. It's very significant that what you've got here is two slightly different approaches. In the first one, Jesus is very conscious of this woman with the problem. When she touched his long robe, his garment, theoretically, he would have not felt it. But Jesus was very much aware of who she was and what her problem was, and knew that it was not only healing, but to me, this woman was an outcast, had been rejected by so many people because of her lifestyle. And that's why she didn't want to be seen in public in coming to Jesus. But forgetting the past, and you know, this is the lovely thing about Jesus. He's not concerned about your past, he's concerned about your future. And he said, yes, be comforted, and your faith has made you whole. And it says that the woman was instantly healed. Now, when he came into the ruler's house, it's quite clear that there had been a delay. But you know, what we have to understand with God is that God's delays are not necessarily his denials. Some people see instant answers to prayer. And I know, for example, when I'm praying with the sick in my evangelism, it's quite interesting that a vast number of people are instantly healed. Why? Well, because as in the case of Jesus, you really only have one opportunity with these people. I mean, when I get thousands of people in a stadium, I don't expect ever to meet those people again. So, interestingly enough, some of them do come up to me after years and comment on their healing. But it needs a miracle at that time. But sometimes there are delays. I mean, for example, the 2 times that I had major cancer, the throat cancer and then ultimately the lung cancer, in both cases, I prayed for 3 months before I received the healing. But the fact was that I didn't despair. I was confident in both cases that Jesus would heal me. And of course he did. But sometimes it means even my faith has to be tested if I want to see the miracle. And then if you come to verse 27, you see a different kind of miracle. Jesus left that place where he was, and 2 blind men followed him. And they were both crying out, "Son of David, help us." Now, it's very significant here that they weren't referring to him as Jesus or the Jewish Yeshua, and they were not referring to the place that he came from, which is Nazareth, because he was known as Jesus of Nazareth, because there were so many young men called Jesus or Yeshua. I mean, even in the Old Testament, you've got the Joshua, which is Yeshua, exactly the same. So he was always identified of Jesus from Nazareth. But these blind men saw something more. They recognized prophetically who he was. To call him Son of David recognized he was the Messiah. And so they were looking to the Messiah to heal them. What happened is, as you know, when you read this, when Jesus was come into the house, the blind men came into the house following him. And what Jesus said was very simple. "Do you believe that I'm able to do this?" And they said, "Yes." And he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith be it done." And their eyes were open. But the interesting thing is, again, Jesus is questioning. When he says, "Do you believe that I'm able to do this?" they weren't talking to a man simply called Jesus of Nazareth. They were talking to someone who they recognized was the Son of God, the coming Messiah, and had power to do it.